Hello, this is Mr. Novak. For today's lesson, what I want you guys to take notes on is on net forces. We're going to kind of work on kind of like a math part of forces, in which direction they're going, and also determine if the forces are balanced or unbalanced. So let's kind of do a quick refresher here. So when two forces act in the same direction, you add them together. So my example would be people pushing a table. If I'm pushing a table and someone else is pushing a table, and we're pushing in the same direction, our forces, right, my force and that person's force, we would add them together, okay, because we're going together to push that table, let's say pushing it to the left. Now let's take a look. If we have, when two forces are acting in opposite directions, we would subtract them. So if I'm pushing to the left and someone else is pushing to the right, we're going against each other. So we're not going with each other, so we can't add our forces together. We have to subtract them. We have to see what the difference is, to see if one person might be stronger than the other person, and that's what the direction would go as well. So we have to subtract them because we're not doing it together. We're going against each other. So for example, let's take a look at our two things. We have to have balanced forces. Balanced forces are forces that are equal and act in opposite directions, so it results in no movement. So again, if we go with the table example, if say I'm pushing at 50 newtons to the right and someone's pushing at 50 newtons to the left, we have our total is the same. We both have 50 newtons, so we would subtract them, right? 50 newtons minus 50 newtons, and it result in no movement. So the table would not move if we were both pushing at the same with the same amount of force. An unbalanced force are forces acting on an object that are not equal, so there will be movement in a given direction. So as long as let's say there's two forces, if I'm pushing on it and someone else is pushing on it in the opposite direction, if one person's stronger and it will be moving. Or if I'm pushing on an object and no one else is pushing on it, it would move. Okay, so all those are examples. So let's take a look here. So our first example, we have 10 newtons. So this arrow is telling you, the arrows are telling us what force is being acted upon the box. So if we take a look at this, we have 10 newtons and it's being pushed on, the direction of the arrow is going to the right. So as we can see, there's no other arrows and there's no other forces acting on this box. So what we will do is our net force would be 10 newtons, and the direction, when we do net force, we always want to add the direction. The direction would be to the right. Okay, and then we have to determine if it's balanced or unbalanced. So if there's movement, right, if there's a net force, that means it is unbalanced. Okay, so let's take a look at our next one here. We have, as you can see, this one's a little bit different. We have an arrow on the left side and we have an arrow on the right side. If we take a look, this is saying this is 50 newtons on the left and 50 newtons on the right. So if we have two opposite directions, right, if we have two opposite directions, we have to subtract them. So I do 50 newtons minus 50 newtons, okay, it's going to equal 0 newtons, okay, so my net force is 0 newtons, right, it won't move in a direction, it won't move to the left or to the right, and since there's no movement, right, something that's no movement is balanced. Alright, our next one here. So we have an arrow on the left and we have two arrows on the right. So again, if we have two arrows that are pushing on the box to the left here, these two forces, 20 newtons and 30 newtons, are going to be added together. So if I do 20 plus 30, take out my handy dandy calculator, 20 plus 30 is going to be 50 newtons. Okay, so I have 50 newtons on the right side. I'm just going to write that up here just so I have it. I have 20 newtons on this side. So I still have a force on the left and I have a force on the right, so I have to subtract them. So I do 50 newtons minus 20 newtons, and I'm going to get 30 newtons. Okay, so my net force would be 30 newtons, and the direction would be going to the left. Okay, you can kind of see it if you look at it. 20 newtons and 20 newtons cancel each other out, and 30 newtons are going to go that way to the left. So if there's movement, it's unbalanced. Okay, and let's take a look. our last example here. Again, we have an arrow on the left side, we have an arrow on the right side. So if they're going against each other, right, if they're going in opposite directions, we have to subtract them, right? So I have 8 newtons minus 5 newtons, okay, is going to be 3 newtons. Our net force would be 3 newtons. And again, I'm looking at which direction is the bigger force, and it's going to the left here, okay? And there's movement, right? So we see it, there is movement, so the net force is not 0. So if it's not 0, if there's movement, it is an unbalanced force, okay? So what I would like you guys to do after you finish taking these notes, there's a check your understanding note page where I want to see how you do with this. So make sure you work on that. If you have any questions, be sure to ask me. This is Mr. Novak signing off. Have a great day.